The envelope was cream-colored, expensive-looking. The kind of paper that feels important between your fingers. It arrived on a Tuesday, mixed in with the usual junk mail and bills. I almost threw it away with the rest. I wish I had. The return address simply read, Department of Biological Resource Allocation, Room 4402, Federal Building, downtown. No street number, no name, just that cold, clinical title that meant absolutely nothing to me. Inside, the letter was typed on matching cream stationery, each word perfectly aligned, each sentence a hammer blow to my chest. Dear MX Thorne, this letter serves as your official notification and confirmation regarding your scheduled mandatory organ donation procedure. We are pleased to inform you that you have been selected as a compatible match for patient 7743B, whose critical need has been deemed urgent by the Federal Medical Priority Board. Your contribution will save a life, and we thank you for your civic duty and sacrifice. Your procedure is scheduled for Tuesday, November 19th at 6 a.m. at St. Raphael's Medical Center, Building C, Operating Theater 7. Please arrive by 5 a.m. for pre-operative preparations. As per the Biological Solidarity Act of 2024, this donation is legally binding and mandatory. Failure to appear will result in immediate federal warrant issuance and criminal prosecution under Section 47, subsection 12 of the aforementioned Act. Your designated organ for extraction is your left kidney. Post-operative care and recovery monitoring will be provided at no cost to you for a period of 6 weeks following the procedure. Unquote. It was signed by someone named Dr. Miriam Holloway, Director of Procurement, like I was livestock. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the paper. Each time, they became more real, more impossible, more terrifying. I never signed up for this. I never checked a box on my driver's license. I never registered with any organ donation program. I was certain of this. Absolutely certain, because I'd always been too squeamish about the whole thing. The idea of my body being carved up, even after death, had always disturbed me. There was no way, no possible way, I would have volunteered for this while I was still alive. But there it was. November 19th. 1 week away. The surgery was in 7 days. I called the number at the bottom of the letter. It rang exactly 4 times before someone picked up. No greeting. Just a flat, emotionless voice asking for my reference number. I don't have a reference number, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I received a letter about a mandatory organ donation. But there's been a mistake. I never signed up for anything. Silence. Then the sound of typing. Name, Thorne. First name, Avery. More typing. The silence stretched out so long I thought they'd hung up. Your file shows voluntary registration on March 3rd, 2023. Electronic signature verified through the National Medical Registry portal. The donation is confirmed and legally binding. That's impossible. I never did that. Check again. There has to be a mistake. The electronic signature has been verified against your biometric data. Voice pattern, retinal scan, and fingerprint analysis all confirm authentication. The registration is valid. Registration is valid. My mouth went dry. I want to speak to a supervisor. I want to appeal this. There are legal processes, aren't there? I have rights. You may file a formal appeal within 48 hours of notification. However, given the urgent status of the recipient and the proximity of your scheduled procedure, appeals are rarely granted in time to affect the donation schedule. Would you like me to email you the appeal form? Yes. Yes, send it. Appeal form sent to the email on file. Please note that failure to appear for your scheduled procedure will result in immediate criminal charges. Have a pleasant day. They hung up. I spent the next 3 hours filling out the appeal form. Every question felt designed to trap me, to make me seem unreasonable for not wanting to give up a piece of my body to a stranger. Why do you believe you should be exempt from civic biological duty? What medical conditions prevent you from donating? Do you understand that your refusal will result in the death of another human being? That last question sat on my screen for 20 minutes before I could answer it. They were making me the murderer. If this patient died, it would be my fault. My selfishness. My unwillingness to sacrifice. But it was my body. Mine. I submitted the appeal at midnight. The response came back in 14 minutes. Denied. The recipient's need was classified as Priority Level 1. My kidney was already allocated. The surgery would proceed as scheduled. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at my laptop, searching for any information about the Biological Solidarity Act. I found it eventually buried in a massive spending bill from 2024. Barely 3 paragraphs, written in the dense legal language designed to hide its true meaning. In cases of urgent medical necessity, citizens may be called upon to provide biological resources to preserve the life of another. Selection is based on compatibility, availability, and equitable distribution of civic burden. All donations are mandatory upon notification and legally enforceable by federal law. The comments section beneath every article about it was disabled. The few news stories I found were clinical, matter of fact, a necessary measure, a reasonable sacrifice, a small price to pay for a more equitable healthcare system. No one was protesting. No one seemed to care. I found online forums, hidden ones, encrypted ones, people whispering about letters they'd received, a lung lobe, a piece of liver, bone marrow. Some had gone through with it. Some had run. Those who ran weren't posting anymore. One user claimed they'd shown up at the hospital, pleading, begging to speak to someone in charge. They'd been sedated and prepped for surgery while they screamed. When they woke up, their kidney was gone, and there were federal marshals waiting by their bed with court orders and compliance certificates. Another user said they'd hired a lawyer. The lawyer told them there was nothing to be done. The law was clear. The signature was verified. They could fight it in court for years, but the surgery would happen anyway. Better to go willingly, accept the compensation, take the 6 weeks of care, compensation. I went back to my letter and found it in tiny print at the bottom. $5,000. That's what my kidney was worth. I thought about running. I looked up flights, train schedules, bus routes. But where would I go? The letter said federal warrant. Federal meant everywhere, meant no hiding, meant eventually they'd find me, and when they did, I'd lose the kidney anyway, plus my freedom. I thought about the media, about going public, making noise, forcing people to see how insane this was. But who would listen? The law was already passed. The system was already in place. I'd just be another crazy person shouting about government overreach, about bodily autonomy, about rights that apparently didn't exist anymore. On Thursday, 3 days before the surgery, a courier arrived at my door with a package. Inside was a booklet titled Your Donation Journey, a guide to recovery and wellness. There were pamphlets about what to eat, how to exercise, what medications I'd need. There was a bottle of pills with instructions to begin taking them immediately to prepare my kidney for extraction. There was also a small card, handwritten, that said, "Thank you for your incredible gift. You are saving a life. With deepest gratitude, the family of patient 7743B. I threw it all in the trash. On Friday, I called in sick to work. I couldn't tell them why. Couldn't explain that in 4 days I'd be in a hospital. Cut open, one of my organs removed, whether I wanted it or not. It sounded insane. But it was happening. On Saturday, I drove to St. Raphael's Medical Center. I sat in the parking lot, staring at Building C, wondering which window was operating Theater 7, wondering who patient 7743B was, wondering if they knew. if they cared, if they felt any guilt at all that someone was being forced to give them life. A security guard knocked on my window and asked if I needed help. I drove away. In negative 2000. I want see problems, an allo-like friend. On Sunday, my mother called. We talked about nothing. About the weather. About my brother's new job. I wanted to tell her. Wanted to scream it into the phone. But what could she do? What could anyone do? I told her I loved her and hung up. On Monday, the final notification arrived. A text message. A reminder. Operating theater, 7:05 a.m. Failure to appear will result in immediate warrant issuance and federal prosecution. Please bring identification and your notification letter. I packed a small bag. Comfortable clothes. My phone charger. A book I knew I wouldn't read. I set 6 alarms for 3 a.m. Even though I knew I wouldn't sleep. I didn't. At 2:47 a.m., I got up. I showered. I got dressed. Tried to feel angry, or scared, or something other than this hollow, exhausted acceptance. I drove to the hospital in the dark. The roads were empty. The parking lot was nearly empty. I walked through the automatic doors into the bright, sterile lobby, and a nurse with a clipboard smiled at me. Avery Thorne? I nodded. Right this way. We'll get you prepped and ready. You're doing a wonderful thing today. You should be very proud. I followed her down a white corridor, through white doors, into a white room with a white bed and white curtains, and white walls that felt like they were closing in. They gave me a gown. They took my vitals. They started an IV. A doctor came in. Not Dr. Holloway, someone else. Someone whose name I immediately forgot. They explained the procedure, the risks, the recovery. They asked if I had any questions. I had 1,000 questions. I asked none of them. They wheeled me toward the operating theater, and I saw other gurneys in the hallway. Other people in gowns, staring at the ceiling, silent and still. Other donors. Other people who'd received letters. Other people who had no choice. The anesthesiologist told me to count backward from 10. I made it to 7. When I woke up, it was done. My left side was a scream of pain despite the medication. A nurse told me the surgery was successful. That patient, 7,743B, was doing well. That I should feel good about what I'd done. I felt hollow. They kept me for 3 days. Other donors were in the recovery ward. We didn't talk much. What was there to say? On the 3rd day, they discharged me with prescriptions and instructions and a follow-up appointment. And a letter, another cream-colored envelope. My hands shook as I opened it. Dear MX Thorne, thank you for your successful donation. We are pleased to inform you that due to your excellent tissue compatibility and healthy organ function, you have been selected for our priority donor registry. You may be contacted for future donation needs as they arise. Thank you for your continued service and civic duty. The envelope fell from my hands. I looked down at the bandages covering my left side, at the place where a piece of me used to be, and I wondered what they'd take next, and when the next letter would arrive, and if I'd ever really belong to myself at all.